Go ahead.
Hi, folks, and welcome. Welcome to Just Folks Conversations with Emma. I'm Emma. Well, I'm back with an episode that's going to expand your ability to think and reflect. And it certainly is a pleasure for me because my very special guest this evening is Reverend Judith Hokhmah. And Reverend Judith is one of those people that I think of as a vibration of pure spirit. She's an amazing person. She's done a lot of different things. I'm not even sure where we're going to start. I'm going to ask her to share her early years to bring us into the present. And one thing I'd like to say specifically, Reverend Judith, is that I find your voice absolutely hypnotic. You have one of the most beautiful voices on the planet. And so no matter what you're saying, it always comes across as a meditative message. And I feel very certain if I gave you a phone book, and for those of you who are very young and don't know what a phone book is, back in the day when everybody had a house phone and a landline, uh, names were listed in alphabetical order. I could give Reverend Judith a phone book and you would think you were having a metaphysical experience, certainly, and it would be true. So welcome, Reverend Judith. How are you?
I am good. I am good. Thank you for having me.
Uh, you're very welcome. You've done a lot of different things in your life. Um, I don't really know where to start, but I'm thinking maybe if you could give us a little background as to what your life was like when you were younger as a little girl.
As a little girl, well, I was born in Washington, D.C., in a hospital in Southeast Washington that no longer exists. My father was in the Coast Guard, and his name is John Du Bois, and my mother's name is Helen. So because he was in the Coast Guard, we wind up moving to New York City when I was about 7 months old or so. He was stationed at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. So I grew up in Brooklyn and then later on in Spanish Harlem, El Barrio, Johnston Projects, East Side, Manhattan. Went to Brandeis High School, Bronx School of Science, transferred to Temple University, graduated Teacher Corps program from the Teacher Corps program there. Went on to live and work in West Africa, had some children, got married, came back, did my master's degree at Columbia University, worked in the school system of New York, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Ghana, and in Nigeria as a headmistress. Came back, worked at Howard University and some other places. And then I finally left education about 12 years ago. I had already become a minister, and so I left education and started my ministry full time.
Whew, that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
You've had a really expansive life. So, I mean, and I know there's more coming. But just to look back over what you've done, so many things. How on earth did you manage moving from country to country? And, what was it like, for example, teaching in a non-US climate in Ghana?
Actually, it's quite heavenly.
Okay.
I was a member of the the Pan-Africanist movement throughout my college years. My father was an advocate of the Nation of Islam, so we grew up in a very aware, I would say, and politically astute environment because of all that was going on in the world at that time. And so I happened to be blessed enough to have met Kwame Nkrumah when I was a child. And I was so mesmerized.
And share with the audience who he was in history.
Well, at that time, he had just become the president of the newly independent nation state of Ghana, West Africa. And it was exciting because he went to school on the East Coast, Howard University, Lincoln College, and he was friends with friends of my family, the Dr. and Mrs. Lee. And when he left the United States to go to Ghana, he took Dr. and Mrs. Lee and some of his other American and Caribbean friends with him to help set up industry. And they were dentists. So they set up the first dental school in Ghana and the first dental clinic under Nkrumah's government. And their children were my friends. So I was already familiar with him and with the country in those years. And we were dancing. He came back to the United States. He was at the UN. And Fidel Castro was here at that time too, as we know, as the president of Cuba. So we got to dance for them. And I was so mesmerized by being in the energy of these men and the women that followed and were part of their entourage and part of their government. I immediately said, look, I'm definitely going to do some traveling in my life. I think I made up my mind that day I was going to marry a Ghanaian. I mean, he was the regalia he wore, the African clothes, the stature, his language, his deportment. I just fell in love with that aspect of who we are. And so when I finished college, I was headed for East Africa to be a headmistress of a girls' school. I changed my mind actually, because I became pregnant and my husband said, that we could go to Ghana because he was from Ghana. So we went to Ghana and it was wonderful. His family is very loving still. And teaching there was magical. Teachers are well respected. The children would get up early in the morning and sweep the compound out and fix breakfast for me, then go to school. Okay.
The school children.
These are high school children and my husband's family. Yeah, they did this. They helped take care of the baby, and then they would get dressed and go to school. And in the evening I would do counseling and tutoring for them. But I mean, it was just fun for me. They really didn't need it, because school is quite different in Ghana in that students, it's all they do except work around the family. They're dedicated to what they do. And so as a teacher, you get students who are dedicated to you being in their presence, and they are sucking up everything you have to offer. It's quite a beautiful experience. Parents love you, you're well revered and well cared for. Yeah. So it was
what were you teaching?
Oh gosh, everything from, let me see, my first job, I taught at the Lincoln Middle School. I was a second grade co-teaching with another teacher, and we had like a large classroom, multi-level grades in it. And so that was an American style educational program in Ghana. I've also worked at the University of Ibadan, where I taught educational drama and dance to education students. We were using the arts, because I have a background in the arts, to teach English reading and language arts to students through writing of dramatic plays and then acting them out, and the dance and all that was in it. I've also been a headmistress of a school. In fact, the headmistress job, I got it while I was still here, giving birth to my second son, my second child, who is my son. So I got the job, and when I got to Nigeria, there was a piece of land, just a beautiful piece of land. And so I sat down with the lady who owned it and the builders, and we designed a school built in the round. So the children.
What motivated you to use that particular configuration?
I had been to the University of Ghana, and all of their, well, not all, but I was in living quarters. And this is a common style in West Africa. The buildings are built in the round and the family gathers in the middle. So it's not like you're out in the street or outside on the sidewalk playing. You play in the compound, which is in the middle of where the family is gathered. So I built the school that way because my experience in America with children playing in the schoolyard, the teachers are eating lunch over here and a few people are on duty on there and all kinds of things happen. So we built it so that the lower grades could do their recess right in the middle of the compound so we could all see them. The older children went out to the field on the outside of the building, and this inner sanctuary, as it were, play sanctuary, would be for the younger children. So we designed it, and they built it. And I had maybe 16 teachers, Ghanaian, Nigerian. I think I was the only person from America, but some ladies from England. And we put together a curriculum with English as a second language from pre-K to grade 4. And I served as principal of that school once we got started for a full year before I left Nigeria.
Well, let me ask you further, what is the relationship? You know, now currently many Americans are discovering their connectedness to Africa, the continent, as a real source of healing and growth. But during the time you were there, it wasn't necessarily common or popular. How did being an American what was the impact of the fact that you were coming home? How did it impact your relationship, and how were you received? You know, what did people say?
Yeah, when I got off the airplane, my first trip to Ghana, I went with a group called Educators to Africa. So there were many educators. There was a whole airplane full of us.
Were you all of the same ethnic background?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And from all over the United States. The Educators to Africa at that time was located in New York City. I don't think they're still in existence, which is an idea about to happen.
Okay.
But so we all were on the plane. Some friends of the Akan community, people who practice African traditional religion, lifestyle in America, were also a part of the group. So we were, you know, we were all of the same mindset that people are going now. It just wasn't in the news.
Okay.
When I got off the plane, looking out into the airport, it was a swarm of people, and they were dancing, and they were waving their scarves, and they were singing, and I believe the word is akraba, which means welcome. And I assumed that they did this for every plane load of people who came. These were my husband's family members, had come to welcome us home. So that's how I was received. And it's just a small nugget of how I was treated, how I'm still being treated by this loving family and everyone associated with them. Yeah, it's quite different. You lose this sense of anything except knowing you are, number one, a real person that people can see and respect and love and care and nurture with, and you can grow into whatever you want to be, you know, because without the experience of racism or second-class citizenship or people challenging and strategizing on how to keep you in place, you are just free. There's a liberation of the heart, mind, and soul just by stepping on the continent that I have never experienced before or since in this side of the world.
Well, I would suspect that that same sort of reception is still ongoing because increasing numbers of Black Americans are preparing to make that transition, and it looks like it's going to be a permanent move for a number of people. I'd like to share with the audience that our common thread is One God, One Thought, Center for Better Living,
Yes.
of which you are one of the pastors, and I'm a member. There is at least one of the members of OGOT who is planning to move to, I don't know if it's Ghana, but certainly within the next year or so, is moving permanently and planning to set up, business, and just that's going to be her life from this point,
Beautiful.
from that point forward. And I think there's some famous folks who are making that move as well. I understand Stevie Wonder is making that transition.
Yeah, I was in Nigeria during the years of Festac, which was a huge African festival, and I'm not sure that it still happens, but that was in the late 70s, maybe early 80s, and Isaac Hayes was there and established a home. Stevie Wonder was there was talk that he was there. Rita Marley, Bob Marley's wife, has a home. There are quite a few. And I mean, 2 years ago when I was there, some of our younger hip hop artists are also buying land and getting involved in business and industry there as well.
Well,
Yeah.
then that's all very exciting. Excuse me. And it's interesting to see how, given the climate that we're facing right now, and as we're recording this, tomorrow will be Juneteenth,
Yes.
which has become a national holiday in the United States, a federally recognized holiday, that we're looking at two sides of a coin, with Black people experiencing continued racism in its many insidious forms, and yet it seems as though we're having an awakening of some sort, which to me is wonderful, but it's also spreading, and I'm seeing it all throughout the culture.
We are uniquely positioned to not only because of our history and our experience, but also because how we have not lost sight of our spiritual nature through all of this. We are uniquely positioned to lead this entire planet to the place of peace, whether we are in this country or anywhere on the planet. I think this is a mandate for us that we are ever growing into more and more. That is the beauty of what's happening today for me.
Well, and I would agree with you, because my first real awareness of New Thought and a movement toward a spiritual existence at first led me to think there was a secret code and only a few people knew about it. But the more I opened my eyes, I began to see, well, it's really out there in the open, and it's been there all along. I just didn't recognize it. I just didn't know. How do you see us moving as a group forward? How do we take the rest of the world with us to reach these
It's
higher
not.
levels of consciousness?
I don't know that it is that it needs the rest of the world along with us every step along the way. I think that each community begins to work on itself right where we are. I mean, it's individual by individual, awakening to what liberation theology is for us today, which I believe is quite different than it has been for when that label or that idea was used in previous eras. It has some new nuances, at least it's developing that way for me. So we're working on that person by person. We're working on that family by family. We're working on that community by community. And it's not that we are supposed to take a leadership and pull the rest of the world. We have to establish this model for ourselves. This is where we must start.
And in a sense, it's sort of, and this is a super simplified version, but I too am a retired educator. I was a special educator. And one of the techniques I used with children, it seemed to be a little reticent about what was going on in the classroom, was to find that cohort of kids who were ready to go. Yeah, let's do this. And we had such a marvelous time in doing whatever it was. The ones who were, quote, left out wanted to join in. And I see that in a sense happening.
Wow, I love that model. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the truth is, we are having a marvelous time as we
Yes,
move
we
forward.
are. Yes,
Yeah.
we are.
I want to point out to our audience that one of the many things that you do is write. You're an excellent writer, and you have written for the Universal Foundation for Better Living, UFBL. And in August of 2018, this is one of the pamphlets that comes out each 2 months. This is called The Daily Inspiration for Better Living. And you were selected as one of the writers. And I was just absolutely thrilled. And the reason I want to share this is because your writing is so focused and succinct and fully embraces a thought which any and everybody can fully indulge in and just kind of rest in it. And it was one that you did on August the 19th in 2018. If you don't mind, I'd like to share that because I think it really exemplifies who you are and how you function. It's called Sacred Lens. I am God's eyes. I see only good, and my life is good because I am looking from God consciousness. I am wearing God's sacred lens and seeing as God sees. I know and affirm the truth in every situation. There is only love. Regardless of appearances, love is working its way out in every condition. I make room for love to have its way in me. I speak, breathe, move, and have my being in my God every day. With confidence and joy, I affirm, praise God. I give thanks that spirit is my bridge over all earthly troubled waters. Through my sacred lens, every seeming crooked path is made straight. I see God's healing hand in all my affairs. I feel God's grace embracing and restoring all relationships. From Proverbs 23:26, my child, give me your heart and let your eyes delight in my ways. And so it is.
Who wrote that?
You wrote that. You wrote that. This is you. This was in 2018. And you have also shared your vision with a number of folks in conducting writing workshops, which we happily participated in through OGOT. So do you have plans for doing something like that in the future? Would you be
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. Yeah, that would be great to do something like that. You know, I love the arts, writing. I don't think I also mentioned to you that I'm a yoga teacher.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and you know, we have to live life fully. That's what we're here for. So, you know, when something, I was one of those children when they ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And all I could think of was everything.
Okay.
I thought it was such an impingement upon my world for me to have to pick something, you know. So I went to college and I did some writing. I did some radio broadcasting. I did a lot of dance, and I settled on education when I figured out, oh, I want to get married and have children. And teachers get out of school the same time their children do. Oh, how lovely. And we get the summers off. So it kind of, you know, my life kind of has been evolving around those kinds of decisions. What feels good? Where is spirit moving me in the moment? It's worked for me.
Well, clearly it's worked for you. And because it's working for you, the vibration, the peacefulness, see, here's the thing. I see you as kind of a dichotomy. We have all of this high energy of wonderful, positive things that can be done, and at the same time, very calm and smooth and fluid. And it's an interesting combination. Most people tend to be very much one way or very much the other, but rarely do you see a person who's able to operate out of both sides of that with no conflict.
Yeah, there is a calling in our lives to be still. And some of us hear it and we keep moving through it. I think I tend to respond to it. I can, you know, and now that I got more control of my life in terms of when I get up, when I sleep and all like that. I can actually get up and prepare to go to the grocery store and remember that Haynes Point is particularly beautiful this time of morning, this time of year, and divert my car and just go and sit by the water. And I'm okay with that. If there's nothing pressing that has to happen, I'm okay to change my plan. Meditation and prayer are an intricate part of my life. I spent a lot of years as a student of Islam. Praying 5 times a day is delightful for me.
Okay.
And so this is a part of how I stay calm. I've raised 7 children. You see, and God, that there's a lot that needs to be done there in terms of, scheduling and things to do and all that.
Yeah.
Meditation and prayer fills all the empty gaps in between there. I'm waiting for them to come out of school. I could drop into meditation right in the car. It's just a part of my life. Each night before I go to sleep, I have what I call the midnight meditation process. And I wake up and I have the 4 M's in the morning: mantra, move, meditation, make up your bed.
Okay.
And so these things are built in, not because they just feel good. They just feel good. And so I do it. I grew up in a household, honestly, I have to tell you this, that was very, very hectic. And my father had a drinking problem. And I often went in my bedroom and closed the door and went into my closet for space, for quiet, for peace of mind. I spent years in Catholic elementary school, although I wasn't Catholic. So, well, that's another story. I had an aunt that was a nun who convinced our parents that Catholic school education would be great for all of us. So we went. We got special permission from the cardinals and so forth, the Archbishop of New York, although we weren't Catholic.
Okay.
So when it came time to go to communion, I would have to sit at the edge of the bench while the entire school, 300 or 400 children, went and had communion. So that became meditation time for me.
Let me ask you something. How did you handle that? Did at any point did you feel like an outsider, that it was something, quote, wrong with you because you couldn't or wouldn't do what everyone else was doing?
No, it actually developed a revolutionary. I began to be very critical. While sitting in that place, in that quietness, I got to establish a unique relationship with the divine. And I knew it. So I was like looking forward to them leaving the aisle, clearing the benches, so to speak. And I would just get into my little groove. And then I began to listen. And there was something in the tradition about fearing God. And I would begin to tell myself that that's not true. There's nothing to fear about God. Be good, have this fear of God was kind of like the way it came across to my ears, that we got to be good because God will punish you, that sort of thing.
Right.
I felt in my heart, I knew that was not my experience. So those moments became that kind of, opportunity to develop my unique relationship with my own divine. And I believe that has sustained me throughout my life. I started Catholic school in the 1st grade, and I went there until 8th grade. So these are like the formative years of my life.
And during that time, were you still praying 5 times a day?
No, Islam came for me in my 20s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I did the rosary. I love the rosary. I carry the rosary with me all the time. Even though I wasn't Catholic, I would get up early in the morning, not all the time, but towards the end, 7th and 8th grade. During Lenten season, I would get up and walk to from 113th Street, where I live, to 119th Street. I think the church was called St. Michael's or something. I can't remember. It was 119th Street between Lexington and Park. It was a Catholic church. They had a 6 o'clock mass there. So I would leave home, walk up there, go to 6 o'clock mass, and then get back to my school to be in the line at 8 o'clock, 8:30 when the bell rang. I was not Catholic, but I had grown in such a love for spirit, for being in that energy. And that 6 o'clock mass was a high mass. If you remember in the Catholic churches, when we had high masses, the myrrh and the sage and the incense was like all over the place, and the room was kind of dim, and it was all meditative and beautiful. I loved it. So that's how I would begin my days, you know. And then I was living in Spanish Harlem, where gun violence and drugs and everything else that afflicted all of us was also afflicting us. And I lived through, I had to survive through that too.
What was the discussion you were having with your parents? Because you said your father was tended to be what he studied Islam.
Yeah, my father was a follower of the Nation of Islam, although he had a drinking problem.
Okay.
That never left him.
Okay.
Through those years. But his language, his understanding, his empowering and supportive love for us as children, very present, very present. So there was a dichotomy there, you know. We lived through it and we survived, and I think that we're the better for it. Yeah.
Well, they say there's a reason for everything that happens, and particularly if you're aware, you can get the lesson that's intended for you.
Yes, there's nothing more important to me in my life today, and this is the day before Father's Day, imagine that, than the support that I received from my father. In spite of all of, I can say, that could have been or should have been or would have been, whatever, it was there. He was there for us. He was there for me. You have to ask each one of his children what their experience was. But I can tell you, I had my years now. I'm not a saint. I actually played hooky in high school, and I was pretty. You know, I was in elementary school and dyslexic. So
really,
I mean, you know, some people tell you that it's still a little bit there because I'm very much looking at the bigger picture of life, but sometimes the details, I don't pay attention to them. So, you know, it's wonderful to have ministry partners who pay attention to details. So that's how it works for me to be around people who can do that. But I had this reading problem. You know, I was actually like in the 4th, 5th grade, and I had not begun to read on grade level. And the nuns there brought a program, the Scientific Learning Association had something called the SRA reading program. Which you're familiar with that?
I'm familiar with that, yes.
Yeah. And so this was like 4th grade. I graduated in the 8th grade and was one of the children who represented the school at the citywide spelling bee. So imagine that. You know, so when I got to high school, it was kind of like a breeze. So I would leave home, get on the New York City subway, onto the Pennsylvania Railroad, travel to Philadelphia, and go bowling in the bowling alleys with friends of mine. And then at the end of the day, I would come back home. I'd get back on the railroad, come home, and go in the house like I had been to school, because we lived all the way at the Bronx at that time, and my high school was in mid-Manhattan. So I always came in late anyway. And I did this for a solid month. And the school called home. My father answered the phone. For some reason, I was in the house that day. And it might have been after hours, school hours or something. So I could hear him talking to them, and they're telling him, your daughter has not been in school for, you know, this long period of time. And we want to know what's going on, you know, whatever they ask. And all I heard my father say was, you're lying. This could not be true. My daughter could never do this. You need to check your records. And if you do suspend her, I'm suing the city of New York. I mean, he was going for it. Okay, I was dead wrong.
Did you?
Father told me, he said, go to school tomorrow and you go and tell those people that they need to finish their records out, complete their records on your attendance, and let me know how it happened. I never missed a day of school again. I
Did you ever acknowledge what happened?
never, never. Honestly, I have never. I have never.
Mm.
And I graduated with honors. And so that is to let you know that, there is improvement for all of us, including me. But that's the kind of support,
Mm.
even for when I was wrong, he could not see that in his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
He could not see that in me, you know,
Which allowed you to see yourself
a
at a
different
much
kind of
higher.
me. Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes, yes.
Mm.
I'm indebted to him. I really
Yeah.
am. Yeah.
You
So
you
yeah,
you selected the right parent.
okay, I'll accept that. You.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. One of the things I know that you mentioned, you may want to share, has to do with working with someone who's rather influential in our society and around the world. Her name is Iyanla Van Zandt.
Oh yes, my beloved sister. Yes.
Yes.
But
Would you like to share
well, that's
what that
it.
was like?
Oh wow, it was like having a family. It wasn't just a Yanla. There were about 14 of us.
Hmm.
That moved throughout the United States, doing that workshop with her, uh, what wasn't tapping the power? Wonder Woman, and we were like family. You know, uh, brothers and sisters, and of course we had our little brother and sister issues as well, but it was mostly about spirit. We prayed for everything. Before we had a meeting, we prayed. We get in a circle before they pass the food around.
Hmm.
Before every workshop, before anybody ever walked in the door, the team had been in prayer. And I don't mean just a couple of minutes. When we did workshops, and I'm sure they probably still do it, preparation for the workshop began 6 months out. If you are going to be a member of that workshop team, you are reading particular Bible verses, you are doing certain meditations, you are preparing yourself so you are there serving the community from your overload. This is how you walk in to work at a workshop.
Mm.
So imagine what that does for your life.
Yes.
So yeah, it was wonderful time. Wonderful time. Yeah.
So, have you seen any of that? That was like training for you. Has that been any spillover in anything that you're doing currently or that you've done since?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it has. It has. The work we did at Innovisions, I left it there because I wrote and contributed as a member of Iyanla's team, and it was for that specific purpose. So when I left there, it meant that I had to establish myself as a student. I had to research and meditate and pray. And the materials I work from now are newly developed. Just to show you how abundant God is, that I worked there for more than 10 years, contributing to the writing of that curriculum and leaving all of that behind. And then asking Spirit, well, what is it that I'm to do in my ministry? And all this new, exciting material shows up. It's God is just wonderful. So yeah, the me that I developed there, that I helped bring into evolution, I would say, in myself, that came with me, and is still a part of me, and is still growing today. So yes, it does have its effect.
So now you have the Judith Hokhmah Ministries.
Yes.
How would you describe what your work is and how you move forward?
Great question. And it's still developing for me. I can tell you that it's a ministry on the move. I'm not inclined to own a huge edifice of a building. I love moving from community to community. So I call it the ministry on the move. It has some ideas undergirding it. One of the things I'd like to see is the New Thought community. worldwide working together so that there's something we do in our consciousness and in our daily walk where I don't know myself as belonging to this organization or that organization, but the purpose and the project is what binds us, not the ideologies. So if we can do that among ourselves as new thought thinkers, then we can begin to do that with our community brothers and sisters. So that I have people in my family who are in the Nation of Islam, and we work together. We have projects together. And so I want to see that happen in my world, where African American people come together because we have a common cause to bring peace and tranquility and better living by any standard that we choose to ourselves, regardless of who we call ourselves, regardless of what we call God or how we pray or when we pray. And then we can look at our lifestyles, regardless of what our lifestyles are. That there become some other things combine, bring us together in one accord to do this work that we're on the planet to do, and not our differences.
So you're really talking about a higher consciousness that everyone shares, regardless of the outer trappings of their particular culture.
That's a beautiful way to say it. It really is, yes.
I did want to ask you, just to clarify for our viewers, what New Thought theology encompasses.
Well, there is a standard way of saying it. I think mine's a little different, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. New Thought for me is going back, and this is purely personal. If you ask me to read it from my UFBL Minister's Manual, it will complement, but it will be different. But from my personal perspective, New Thought is bringing forth all of the ancient spiritual traditions that we are in and applying them in a very practical way in my life today. So it includes the heritage that we get from the one called Way Shower, Jesus the Christ. It includes what comes from the honorables of every tradition that we have that has touched our lives, and we bring it into practical application. It's all in the genre of absolute good. We bring it all into application in practical ways in our lives today.
So it's another way of saying there are many paths, but they all lead to the same higher consciousness, the same place.
Absolutely.
And so there's regard and respect.
Yes, and we begin to recognize ourselves on that path. And if I'm not recognizing you and others on that path, then am I really on that path? I just ask myself.
That's a good question. Because it's very easy to be critical of someone or a group of people who are not practicing what you understand to be the truth. And that seems to be where so much of the conflict comes along. Each little group or big group has its own standards and rules and regulations. And if you don't fit into that slot the way they designed it, then woe unto you.
You know, there's a place for that. When you're in kindergarten, you learn to do what is important for you to get that pencil in your hand, for you to make the letters of your name. You know, you get to first, second grade and you're learning about numbers. And it's important to know that 1 comes before 2 and after 0. I mean, you know, all of that, I think some people call it dogma, has a very important place and part to play in my spiritual development. It's intended for me to grow through it and with it, but not to be stuck in it. So at the level that I have outgrown it, It doesn't mean that I have to change religions or I have to do something. It means that I have to expand my consciousness to see more and be more. So that dogma begins to not just be how I take care of survival today. It is how I open to that the higher consciousness. How do I get that to happen? And I don't even have the words for it, but I know that it's possible. And it happens for me. I come out of meditation with the application for what it is I'm about to do. Most of the time I can't articulate it, but I just go about doing it. And I find other people on that path to do it with, because my eyes are open. I'm always open. My eyes are always open on my path, what I call my spiritual path, to see others on the spiritual path. And it's not because of what you say, how you say your prayers. It's the Christ, God, divine energy that you bring. That's who I'm recognizing. So when we can begin to recognize ourselves at that level, the dogma will definitely serve its purpose, but it won't get us stuck.
It will be a tool and not a wedge.
Beautiful way to say it. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. Is there anything in particular you'd like to share? A bit of wisdom, an experience, future plans?
Well, you know, we're living in such a beautiful time. I'll tell you that I am getting very excited about looking at how to move prayer chaplaincy into a bigger stage on the planet. There's so much going on. One of the things I've been paying a lot of attention to are people who pray, who come in or request prayer on the various prayer lines that I have the privilege of being a part of. And mental health, physical health is a big issue today. We understand that because we're living in those kinds of times. But there doesn't seem to be on my side of the sheet, the score sheet, so to speak, enough tools to address these issues adequately for our communities. You know, we say God is our sufficiency, and we have scripture in Genesis that tells us that we have been given the riches of this earth for our food, clothing, our shelter. We've been provided. We're gifted by this creator. We live in an abundant in a universe, and it's a lawful universe. So if you seek, you find. You see? So we don't need to suffer mental health or any other ill health, you know, because we've been given. So one of my greatest desires right now is to continue to study that and find the scripture and find the basis for how to say that, to say exactly that. We don't need to live in fear and doubt and suffering when we have not exhausted, excuse me, the gifts that the Creator has given us. We have herbs in the earth that we are not utilizing. We have nutritious foods and supplements coming right out of the earth, clean air, all of these things that we have yet to reconnect with. And they also can work in the area of mental health.
Well, you bring up, I think, an excellent point, and I want to bring up a counterpoint just to consider. And that is, when we look at the condition of the earth right now, with the oceans of plastic in the oceans, the chemicals that have polluted the ground and the air, and even the advent of COVID-19, which I personally take as the Earth's response to a disease, and that is out of control human living. How do you take a spiritual approach to resolving what, if not addressed in a few more years, few more critical years, I'd say another 20 to 30 years, will leave the earth in a position where there won't literally be much for anyone because of the poisons and the toxins that are just, spilled over into the environment.
Yeah.
How can we approach that with a
Well,
spiritual
it
awareness?
goes right back. It goes right back to the beginning. When you were asking about how do we bring peace on the planet, it begins with the individual. You see, and it begins by actually investigating what is it that I'm missing. If God is my sufficiency, what am I missing? What have I overlooked? Which leaf have I forgotten to turn? So in my personal life, I ask that question. Do I have a flower pot I can begin to grow some fresh food in? You see, do I have air filters I can begin to clean my home with? Am I using solar energy? Am I making those critical changes individually? If each of us is doing that individually, then we're making a massive change on the planet. Now, this is not to say that I'm convincing the rest of the world to do the same, but I have to do my part. I can't boggle my mind with looking at the problem. I have to begin to look at the solution.
That's the difference. You're right. What you look for, you find. If you're looking at the problem exclusively and extensively, what you'll find is the problem and not a solution. So,
yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
You can have a garden. I mean, you look, there's something green behind you. It could be growing peppers, tomatoes, right there in our homes, Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I have a garden here. I have a garden in 3 different places here in Washington, D.C., where I got hold of some land. And so our family just started planting. It's a family event, you see. Grandchildren, mothers and fathers, we're all out there. And yeah, so that's how you start, and the body is the same way. You begin with the things you can do, the solutions you do know of. We're all worried about COVID-19, but, are we looking at our immune systems? Are we looking at the herbs and the technology the Creator has given us to strengthen our immune system? It doesn't matter whether you take the medicines or not, the shot or not. Ultimately, it is your immune system that is going to get you through. And that is a God-given piece of equipment. Are we honoring that? Are we putting safe, nutritious foods in our body? Are we eliminating the habits and the lifestyles that deplete the immune system? These are choices we can make every day, practical application. Our ancestors knew it. Some of the herbs that are available that have been most effective in getting people through this COVID season have been in our African traditional families for generations and are still being used today. So we have a choice. We can look at that and say, yes, let me try this. Let me do my research and see what that's about. Or we can believe whatever is out there for us to believe otherwise. But for me, if you're asking me for solutions, I'm looking for a solution. I don't want to hear propaganda. I don't want to hear about what we made in the test tube when God's still making it out there in my universe. I'm good on that.
Okay. Well, that's really exercising your faith. That's being the demonstration of the consistency and the integrity of your faith. It's quite an example. Thank you.
Thank God.
Thank you. Well, is there a saying, as I said, or a tidbit, piece of wisdom, some advice you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, I do want to mention that we have a Zoom call every Sunday, Healing Sunday. It's our intention to come together and just celebrate life, celebrate prayer, celebrate getting better and better and sharing what we know so that so many other people can grow. Well, it sounds like poetry. I like that. When this whole season of being indoors and not communicating began, the internet came very large in the experience for us as a ministry. And I was reading in the book of Habakkuk quite frequently. And I got a lot of inspiration from that whole understanding that things are going on that we don't understand, and we ask him, why God, why God, why God? And when we go within, when we get clear to our own connectedness with the Creator, it talks about being able to get up that hill as if you have hinds feet, those feet that just grip to the rock and keep it going.
Yes.
And so Healing Sunday came for me out of that kind of consciousness. How do we keep it going for ourselves and then bring other people into, so kind of like we giving each other a booster shot, so we can go out there and do life as it was intended to be done. So we do that still every Sunday. It actually grew out of an idea that I began early morning prayers. We used to do it 6 o'clock in the morning back in 2009. We started. So during this season, we're 6 o'clock in the evening on Sundays, and it's usually on Facebook and other places. It gets advertised so people can come in. We usually have someone come in and give an inspirational talk, and we pray. We do readings from various New Thought traditions. So I just want to invite people to continue to grow with us and be supported by us as we support ourselves.
Okay, and I will include that information in the description that goes along with this video. So everyone can access a website, or a site rather. It won't be a website, but to get to the Zoom call.
Yeah.
Wow.
Whatever you're doing, whatever walk of life you're in, whatever your spiritual practice, love it, enjoy it, and then come out of it, get active in your life, touch and agree with another person. And let's just keep this thing moving and growing.
Yeah. Well, that is wonderful advice. And as I said, you're the demonstration of what that looks like. And you certainly have inspired me and quite a few people. I have participated in those Sunday healing sessions, and they are absolutely uplifting and of a nature where it's, I won't say otherworldly, but certainly really an elevated consciousness, and they're joyful celebrations, and there's no pressure to do anything except be in the presence. And we're all very connected, and there are people from around the country who are participating in these wonderful, it's just basically an hour, but I feel so energized afterwards. I want to thank you for making time to come and share today, and listening to you, and your sharing with everyone else. I'm of the opinion that they're going to really want to tune in on a Sunday evening, participate, and just be in the presence and feel the love, because basically that's what it is. We're all we're awash with it, and it's a very blessed experience. And thank you for the idea and for acting on it. It's a highlight of my week.
Oh, great. Thank you for that.
Thank
we
you.
Enjoy having you. It's always a pleasure. And so, this Sunday, James, your husband, will be reading from one of our New Thought traditional pieces. Actually, this piece he's reading is from Science of Mind. And I love it because it is Father's Day, and the piece is written almost like an adult child who's reminiscing through what that childhood was and how it's all blossomed for them today. So I'm excited about that. We're going to have as many men, as possible doing everything this Sunday. So it's going to be great.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. And let me ask this: is there any way that the Sunday sessions are they recorded? Are they available to the public, or is that just something that's designated for participants?
Yeah, it's been discussed that we will do that right now, and it's not. It's pretty much tune in and get it, in the moment. But we do plan on making it accessible, growing into that.
Okay.
We're on that learning curve right now.
Okay. All good things are in time, in divine order.
Absolutely.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to add before we close?
Wow. Well, I thank you. This has been a pleasure. Different, but it's a pleasure. And I appreciate it.
I'm certainly very, very, very glad that you agreed to do this. I've been looking forward to having this conversation for quite a while. And
Mhm.
as always, I always learn so much from you. So thank you for sharing
My
from
pleasure.
your heart, as you always do.
My
And
pleasure.
so let's see, this is the 18th, tomorrow's Juneteenth, and
Yeah,
Father's Day is coming on Sunday. So blessings and love and hugs to everybody. And I'll see you soon.
absolutely. Namaste.
Namaste. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.